Welcome to the Kawartha Small Business Podcast, where we believe the Kawarthas can be the most thriving region in Canada for small business. I'm Brian Rump from Profit Coach.
And I'm Matt Garrity from Managing Digital.
And before we get started, head over to kawarthasmallbusinesspodcast.ca/checklist and download Matt and Brian's marketing checklist for Kawartha small businesses. We're recording from Thrive Podcast Studio at Thrive Co-working Community at downtown Lindsay at 18 Kent Street West. And with us today, we have Ursula from the Sunflower Farm and the Little Sunflower Farm. So welcome, Ursula.
Hello, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, tell us about the Sunflower Farm.
Well, where do I start? So I kind of have to go back to, 2019, 2020. That's when I decided to start a sunflower farm in Beaverton, Ontario. So that's where the original location is, the original farm is. And then since then, I've been growing it. And then this year, I decided to take the leap and start a second location here in Lindsay. And super excited that I was, had a warm welcome from the Kawarthas. And yeah, here now in Lindsay.
Do you have a farming background?
Yes, I do. I should have probably said that. Yes. I'm not just, said, okay, I'm going to do farming now. Yes, no, I grew up on a poultry and cash crop farm. Although I never imagined that I would stay in the agriculture world. I definitely I was that person who was like, hey, I'm out of my sleepy town and never coming back, basically, right? And I did. I live a very nomadic lifestyle, obviously pre-pandemic life, and was traveling around a lot, working abroad, studying abroad, just always on the go. And then I decided to kind of, come back to Beaverton, but then also start looking for more, stable career options. And I started looking in the big city of Toronto and wanted to make that move, go into the corporate world. Was looking in, where my studies were, which was international development and business management. So I was looking sort of more down that route, but just kept getting a lot of rejection and rejection after rejection letter, interview after interview. So then finally I kind of I've had this thought about a sunflower farm business, agritourism business. And so I kind of came back, approached my parents with the business proposals, and, said, hey, would you rent me 10 acres? This is what I want to do with it. And my family has zero experience with agritourism. So there's definitely some skepticism at the beginning. I don't know if this is going to work out, but I convinced them, and I got 10 acres then in Beaverton in 2020 and decided, I'm going to run with this. If nobody's going to hire me, I'm just going to create a job for myself. And that's kind of how the Sunflower Farm started. And here I am 3 years later, and I expanded the farm in Beaverton to 20 acres. And now the Little Sunflower Farm here in Lindsay too. So
awesome.
In a nutshell, that's how it started.
I've never even heard of agritourism.
Oh no?
No.
That's so funny.
Is that just me?
You must be a city boy.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. It's
Yes.
a whole buzzword.
It is a buzzword
There's
now.
whole economic development people who spend lots of money on having coffee with farmers to try to get them to do more agritourism.
Yeah, and it's really become a way, for me, I looked at it as in a sense that, I grew up on a farm. I've had that privilege, that opportunity to grow up in that lifestyle. And, when I was younger, I never saw it like that. But as an adult and as I meet more people, there's such a disconnect between individuals who didn't have that experience and, just their knowledge of farming. So for me, it was really just kind of bridging that gap and inviting people to visit an active working farm, see what it's all about. Sure, sunflowers are great, picturesque, photo opportunity, but it's also, the point of the farm is also to produce birdseed. I grow black oil sunflowers, so the main production of those is for birdseed at the end in the fall. I'll harvest the field and package them up and sell them for birdseed.
This whole conversation is already so fascinating to me. I have so many questions. I don't even know where to begin now. So,
I told you we're going to be here for a few minutes now, right?
So, it's your family's farm. So, beyond the rent there, how difficult and financially challenging is it to just plant? How many sunflowers is it?
Yeah, so it depends on the acres you're doing. I'm roughly in total between the two farms, it's about approximately 400,000 sunflowers.
Is that a lot of sunflowers? Like, I don't know now.
On a lot, yeah, for an average person, yes, it is a lot of sunflowers. But if you're looking at farms who are main birdseed producers, right, that is like, it is small. They're doing hundreds more acres. And you look out in Western Canada, where you primarily have larger sunflower farm production out there, they're, much, much larger scale than what I'm doing. For sure, I'm touching more on that smaller agritourism side and trying to offer something different for people to come and visit, but also make sure I'm tying it back to, there is a purpose for growing sunflowers here, and trying to produce like local, a local product for people to purchase.
I don't know if I'm like, what's the goal, or what are you more interested in, like the agritourism side of it, or ultimately being able to sell those for seeds?
I would say both. I mean, definitely my creative side of me is more prominent, and I enjoy really, trying to find creative ways to bring people to the farm. And that's definitely the more the agritourism side. But I'm also, growing up in a farm, I definitely want to continue to learn and grow like that side. And that's something that I definitely wasn't as involved with growing up, just because that wasn't, I didn't see my career going in that route at all. So I'm definitely coming back to the farm and learning, more about, different planting techniques and harvesting the sunflowers. So just really just trying to gain as much, information and education through my family from their experience farming as well. And honestly, I wouldn't have had this opportunity had I not come from a farm, and that my, family are continuously, like, they're active farmers still. So I have access to that equipment. It would be we'd be having a different conversation if I just, came out from Toronto and said, okay, bought a small piece of land and started planting sunflowers. Very different, approaches to it. So
that's how I thought you started. So this is already a good change.
No, definitely coming from a farming background. And
what's been the biggest logistical challenge for having a farm like this?
I mean, I started this agritourism farm in a pandemic. So to begin with, that was the biggest challenge. I don't think, obviously, when I started planning this farm, there was no talk of, what was going to happen in 2020. So I made that jump, that investment, started to plan the whole farm and, plant, order seed, plant and everything, and just plan everything, right? And I did not anticipate, that those months before my opening, whether or not I would even be allowed to be open. So those challenges at the beginning, I would say, were the hardest to kind of navigate around. Luckily for me, being an outdoor business in 2020, I ended up being allowed to be open with restrictions for capacity. Now, that being said, back in 2020, when I opened, I wasn't expecting to get the response that I got in Beaverton. It's hard to kind of fathom that, everybody was just in complete lockdown and they were just looking for something to do. And with so many other business, unfortunately, having to close, and I was able to open, I was an option for them to go and, visit and be outside and, connect with family that they haven't seen. So that was that impact was incredible. But it also created so many other challenges because, I had such a rush of people come to the farm and I wasn't allowed to have them all enter the farm, and I wasn't expecting that. So opening up, a private, farm to the public, now you're dealing with people who have no idea, are you allowed to pick sunflowers? Can you not pick sunflowers? Are you just going to trample over them? Right. And so I really focused on that education part, through social media, being no, this is an active farm. I'm the farmer behind this. Please be respectful. So, and just, line up of people on the road trying to, are they going to jump the fence and things like that. Right. So the pandemic definitely showed a lot of challenges in that first year. And I would say moving on from that, though, it's also trying to figure out ways I can continuously bring people back to the farm, because I don't have any other years to compare my farm to. Right. So was this just a fluke of people wanting to get out and do something, or can I make this sustainable and can continuously invite, have that interest of people to come back to a sunflower farm?
Yeah, so how's sort of the revenue work? Do you charge an admission to come to the farm? Take pictures? Is that kind of
basically it works with the ticket. So you're buying that experience through your ticket. So you're purchasing a ticket to enter the farm, and then you have photo ops. You have access to all our little merch hut where we sell a bunch of goodies, local goodies that we and products that we collaborate with local businesses. For me, it was all about supporting local and collaborating with other businesses. So I tried to make sure that stays, on brand with the farm. And then we also have our floral truck where we bring in a farm florist, and she builds beautiful bouquets throughout the day and to purchase and for you to bring home. Because I also grow about like 10 different varieties of sunflowers on the side, and like smaller scale, just to use for those bouquets and specialty flowers.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
A huge barrier in my mind would be the marketing as well. But do you have a background in branding and marketing and photography?
No, not at all. So that was something that I kind of knew right off the bat. I took business management in university and like had one class in marketing, but no like previous experience working with a company or branding or marketing firm or nothing. So for me, from the beginning, I knew that I needed to get on social media. Mm-hmm. And I'm a person who's was not the social media person. Like, it's kind of hard seeing what I do now to people to believe that. But I was definitely the person who was like, no, if you want to hang out with me, like off your phones, like I don't want to be at dinner, and everybody's on their phones. Like I was very much like, stay off social media. Right. And honestly, I had just gotten Instagram, I think like a couple years before I started this farm. And my personal one was like pathetic, right? So when I started this business, I knew it was like, okay, I have to dive into that social media world, find that balance though, and just make sure, I create that connection with the audience. And for me, it's like, what, if I'm the farmer behind this farm, I need to put my face out there. Yeah. So I knew from the beginning, I had to do that whole selfie video on Instagram stories and create that connection, which was the oddest thing ever. Just, filming yourself and talking to a camera and just, it was very awkward.
So
Taco.
You do all the social media. Do you do it like your logo and your brand and the photography too?
No, I know where my weaknesses are, and I'm not a professional photographer. So I knew from the get-go, I think she found me at Kaylee Jane Photography. She found me, and I just connected, saw her work, and she was local from Sunderland region. So I knew that I wanted to bring somebody in and take beautiful photos of the farm. I also had another friend, Danny. She did some photos for me back in 2020. So I just knew at the beginning, find some key photographers, take some beautiful photos, and put that out there to show what the farm is all about. So, and branding, logo. No, I work with a graphic designer for that too. Definitely, again, not my forte. So
no, that's awesome. Yeah. It's cool that you like understand that and the whole holistic view of the brand. Like, having seen the farm and the one in Lindsay, and then seeing all the little accessory stuff you do with like the truck and the shelving and the bales of hay, and that is the same on Instagram with the beautiful photos. And you walk in here today and you look like a sunflower farmer. Like my wife joked about, like
wearing the sunflower shirt. I wear this every day though. Like I don't know what to wear on days I'm not at the farm. It's like okay, I'm usually wearing overalls every single day. So should I walk in here with those on? No, I'll put those on after when I have to go back to the farm. But yeah, I mean, definitely like for me it was that brand. I need to create a brand, and that was really important. And our trails are lined with straw for practical reasons and also for photo opportunities. So it's finding those things that are just on brand with what I know, what I want the farm to look like.
For sure. I don't know anything about Beaverton, but the one in Lindsay I drive by, like I was saying, every day, and it sticks out in the most positive way. It makes you feel good, and it's exciting. It'll kind of blow your mind. Have you seen it? Did you see it at that time? You go a different way.
Yeah, I think I go a different route.
Yeah, you have to be like, because I have that field right on on Highway 7 there, right? And at that intersection of Highway 735, you see it, like, right when you can get to that intersection. And so many people were just like, I never knew this was here. Like, has this been here like for years? I'm like, no, you're not imagining it. Like first season here in Lindsay, and they said they couldn't believe how it's just this green field, and all of a sudden just pop, like one day it's a field full of sunflowers. So it is quite eye catching to see. Yeah.
It's an extraordinary location, just being at 7 and 35. What's the farm like in Beaverton? Like, are you in like it has busy, populous type of area?
Yeah, so I'm right off of Highway 48. Highway 48 connects to Highway 12, so I'm right before 12 on Highway 48. Highway 48 and Side Road 17, which goes into Beaverton. So the past 2 years, I had the farm. You could see it blooming from the highway, which definitely, again, like people driving by, it just catches your eyes, and just curiosity. People drive in and see that it's a farm experience, so they buy their ticket and come in. I'm definitely trying to do a lot more education now because I have to rotate crops. So I can't have always the field right located on the highway. And a lot of people just don't, without a farming background or just without that knowledge, don't realize that. So it's definitely been difficult this year in Beaverton, just having to do that crop rotation. You can't see the sunflowers right from the highway. So just having bigger signage and trying to push that education, now just trying to do more long-term planning for field rotation. Just because as well, like from the back in 2019, 2020, I didn't know if this was going to be, a complete flop of a business, and I'll be back to the grind of, interviewing and looking for jobs. So, definitely did not think that this would be, take off as it has. And so now just trying to do a little bit more future planning with the farm. Yeah.
Why do you think it took off? Why do you think it was so successful?
As sad as it is, I think the pandemic did play into that at the beginning. Like I said, unfortunately, so many businesses had to close and or even close their doors completely. And on the flip side, I was able to open up a successful business because it was an outdoor business. So definitely getting that, that media attention at the beginning through, some blogs in the city picked me up, and that was incredible. Like, those were things that I did not think would happen at all, but they did. And I think that just goes to show that, I put out something there that people wanted, right? Or didn't know that they wanted, but then it was there. And just, now just year after year, trying to just create that consistency with the farm and just showing, that I can create new experiences at the farm, and hopefully that continues on throughout the future. But yeah, so far that's, I would say, why people keep coming back. So.
I see. I remember a few years ago, we had a neighbor who had a sunflower field, but people just pulled over and totally trampled everything. So it's almost like you gave people an outlet to go somewhere where they don't have to trespass on someone's property and figure out where to park and all of that stuff.
Yeah, and I have seen other farms try to do, open a sunflower business, but they weren't successful with it because of that, lack of respect from visitors, and just, maybe they just didn't plan for certain things or whatnot. I'm not sure why, but, when I saw that, and that was, pre, my idea of opening, I just thought, there is a better way to do this, and we need to, use education and through social media and on my website, having rules in place and explaining that to each visitor who comes to the farm, going over those rules quickly, just so they understand, because a lot of people just, they just go in blindly and just don't know, right? They just don't think I can pick this flower. It's, no big deal. It's no. We're growing these sunflowers for birdseed production. So we can't just pick them. We'll pick in a section that we planted specifically for you to purchase. But yeah, it's that whole connection with your visitor to understand and for them to have that mutual respect.
Yeah, because I bet you so many people that think that they can do this or try to do it, they don't approach it the way you did, with a plan, having that business plan, having that process, being clear, this is an agro-tourism type of thing, which apparently everybody knows about other than me. But it's so interesting that you came in with an actual plan with that versus Brian said, I don't know if it was intentional, but maybe your neighbors grew it. We're hey, we're going to maybe have some people over selling, or I'm sure that sometimes happens, but it all gets ruined for everyone.
I think they were just planning to field sunflowers
for their own.
They didn't really expect. And I think, again, it was a rotation thing because they had them before and they weren't visible from the highway. But as soon as they are visible, people are oh, that looks amazing. And they want to go get pictures. But
yeah, but don't get me wrong. You make it sound like I have everything planned out. Any small business, behind the scenes, it can be a show, basically, right? Oh, yeah. There are many parts of the business that, and I try to be very open through my social media on the ups, the downs, the failures. I've had plenty of failures doing this over the past few years. So
I think what's neat, though, is it was started as agritourism, whereas I think a lot of people in that field, they kind of want it to happen without planning for it, if that makes sense. So I think generally people love Sunflower Farm. They like apple picking. They like the pumpkin patch. People want to visit farms and do stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Some people they see it as a added thing. And well, maybe people will, want to pay or want to stop here. But then they don't plan out, where do we park? What do we tell people? Where do they walk? Right? So to have straw-lined paths makes it a lot easier than like turning people loose and hoping that they don't trample over.
Exactly. Having a designated trail for people to walk through for sure, than just, a free for all in the field. Yeah.
And even just having a ticket, right? Like, I think that's such an important fundamental that other people I've seen don't do that. They're like, well, hopefully they'll, buy enough, whatever the product is, or the merch. But I think you're selling, that family photo.
I'm selling that experience for you to, come to the farm. And also it's, I do, running an agritourism business is different. And, there's different expenses that come along with that as well, right? Like I have a core farm team crew that I hire every year. And without them, I wouldn't be able to run this at all, because there is just so much other work behind the scenes. And for them every day at the farm, they're the ones interacting with every customer and every visitor, right? So for me, it's also an opportunity to bring in students every year and create such a really great farm team experience as well.
This is fascinating. Like, there's so many cool business ideas with this, which I love. But I'm curious, and it's not even a business question, but like, why sunflowers? Why did you start there?
Good question. I mean, that's the thing. Everybody thinks like, this is such an incredible business idea, but it's not like I was reinventing the wheel. Like, there are plenty of sunflower farms more in southwestern Ontario. Even just better growing conditions down there for sunflowers. Sunflowers like dry heat and dry, drier soil conditions. They are a drought resistant crop. So in one sense, it was a crop, somewhat, a safe crop to try out. I had the equipment to plant the sunflowers, so that made it a bit, easier decision to go with sunflowers. And they're a beautiful flower to look at. Like you said, like when you see them, it just brightens your day. And so for me, it was, obvious that, let's do sunflowers. I can also grow them. If the business doesn't work out, I'm growing them also for birdseed production. So hopefully, in that first year is like, okay, if this flops, hopefully I can get my investment back in the actual sale of the birdseed. So it just made sense. Sunflowers, like I said, they're a beautiful flower to look at and to experience.
I think it's great. Yeah.
And I've, from starting with sunflowers with the black oil ones, I've learned that there's like so many different varieties of sunflowers as well, just for floral production as well. So that's been really fun, just growing all these different like colors and varieties and branching sunflowers, like white sunflowers. You got red ones. Like there's so many out there. So it's been really fun just experimenting too, growing different varieties.
And how did you end up in Lindsay at that corner?
Yeah, so I was actually approached by Riverside Cemetery there. Mm-hmm. They own that property, and they wanted to create sort of a beautification project for the cemetery as well. So they saw what I was doing in Beaverton and asked if I wanted to rent their field there and try it out as agritourism and sunflower production there as well. So that's how I got there. And
how did that scare you, leaving the family farm and now having to rent business-wise, or did you feel more comfortable the second time around?
I mean, I'm renting in a sense both farms in that sense, but it was the scarier part was, okay, so, am I bringing equipment from Beaverton? Well, how am I going to, monitor there? How am I going to open? Like, am I going to be open at two locations at the same time? How can I physically split myself in two? Still haven't figured out how to do that, but I'm looking into it. But that was the scariest, of having two sunflower farms open at the same time. So from the get-go, I knew I was like, hey, how can I maybe stagger my planting in order to make sure my Beaverton one, I have two fields there that are planted at different times as well, so I can extend my season in Beaverton. So I thought, okay, what if I do a third stagger planting even later, so that my Lindsay field does not open until my Beaverton one is completely closed. And that was just like, okay, this is a lot of like timing, calculation, and sure, you can, on paper, theoretically, it looks great, but it all depends on the growing season. Yeah. If you have a rainy spring, dry spring, hot summer, cold summer, that's going to affect everything in growing sunflowers or any crop. And that's, I would say, the most stressful for any farmer out there. So that was really, and just I've never planted sunflowers that late in the season, right? So I didn't even know, are they going to mature in time? Are they going to bloom, right? Like, what's our summer weather situation looking like? So yeah, Mother Nature had a lot to do, and I couldn't, chat with her about it. So, yeah, the timing, like in theory, I had scheduled,
Yeah.
told the sunflowers, please bloom on this date. And they were about like approximately almost a week earlier than I anticipated.
Okay.
But my Beaverton location basically closed on a Wednesday. I had to move and set up the farm in Lindsay on the Thursday. And we're talking like moving trucks, moving a merch hut, and all the merch and products and specialty flowers, everything over to Lindsay, and basically set that up on Thursday and then open on Friday. So it was a fast turnaround. I planned for like a week, oh, nice. I could, maybe a day off. I could, sleep in and not to have an 18-hour shift. But nope, it was a quick turnaround.
Oh, wow. How many days do you have for like tourism? I imagine it's not.
It is not long. Yeah. This is where a lot of people think like you said, like, oh yeah, it's, I'll stop by, but then it's over. Right. And sunflower bloom is like max 2 weeks, max. And your prime bloom time is that first week once they start blooming. So yeah, it's a short season. And that's why I did in Beaverton in my second year. I decided to plant 2 different fields at 2 different times, just to extend my bloom time to have, a max maybe 3 to 4 week period of bloom instead of just 2. So
yeah, that's awesome. So much has to go right.
Exactly.
In those times, I think it's that's what's really fascinating as a business with such a kind of micro season.
Mm-hmm.
To be able to market and have it good, and have the right lighting for pictures. And
yes, it'd be nice if it didn't rain on the weekends, right, and things
Yeah.
like that. But yeah, it's a lot of planning to go into a very, very short seasonal business. Yeah, for sure. And a lot of other farms, I would say in agritourism, they're offering like year-round experiences. I'm not at that point yet with my farm, so it's a lot of work to go into a very short bloom time.
Yeah, that's so scary to me. Like, I hate retail. I don't want inventory. I think I'm good at selling services, but the idea of this is even different than inventory. This is like almost food where you have to sell it. Even a restaurant's going to cycle through.
Yeah.
You have so many external factors. Like, we could write a whole list of them.
Yep.
Terrifying.
Yep. And then, you bring in all this, even just like touching on inventory, you bring in like, I've extended my merch line and apparel line, bringing in all this merch and hoping that there's going to be enough people to sell all these, tees and tanks and hats and whatnot. So in such a short period of time, and not having, a massive amount of inventory left over at the end of the season. So yeah, that side is pretty stressful.
What of those external factors has been the scariest or the worst to deal with, I guess?
What has been?
Yeah.
I think I would say more so weather. Weather is just always a kicker when it comes to, like I said, if it's going to rain on a weekend, like nobody wants to, we are open, like, it's a agritourism business and we're open rain or shine, it's fun being in a field sometimes when it's like raining and you get like some cool pics in the rain and everything. But for the average person, they want that perfect sunny day to go out and walk through a farm. So it's really hard, getting those, day after day of rain periods, right? Because your ticket sales drop, and you're letting staff go off early, which is a killer to me too, because I want to make sure that all my crew are have their summer jobs and are working every single day. But it's really hard when those rain days come in, and especially on weekends when that's our prime time to bring in families, especially as we move out of this pandemic world where people are not, working from home and have that flexibility to go out and do stuff during the day. Now it's definitely primarily focused on weekend getaways. So, yeah.
How do you deal with professional photographers scheduling stuff there? This might be a strange question, but so like if Brian and me wanted to go do an awesome sunflower shoot for this podcast, which would fit naturally with our
let's do the next one in the field. That would be awesome.
It's one thing I would be maybe frustrated if I were you. If it was me and him coming in here and taking pictures with our phones is one thing, but if we brought a photographer along professionally, how do you deal with that? Do you just charge them admission or?
No, like since day one, I knew that professional photographers would be interested and want to bring in clients. So I basically, one of the rules was like, there's no commercial professional photography at the farm. Sure, come in, take photos with your fam. You can use, cameras or phones, whatever, as long as it's not for commercial purposes. And then I decided to open up like the farm during those golden hours, because that's when professional photographers want to take photos. So I close it off to the public and only open it for professional photographers to book a separate sort of fee to come into the farm, bring in clients, as many as they want, to do mini sessions or branding sessions or whatnot. So, and then that way they get the prime, photography time during the day of that golden hour, the beautiful sunsets. Like, those are the times that are really nice to see the farm.
Yeah. It feels like you've thought of everything. What's something?
I mean, I tried to, but I know trust me, my team would be like, Ursula, you should have thought about this. It's like, yeah, okay, yeah. No, there's a lot of things I forget for sure.
What's the biggest miss you had this summer where you're like, oh, maybe I should have thought about that more?
Gosh, where do I start? There's like so many little ones that just build up, and I start to like try not to think of all of them. The biggest one this year, honestly, I don't know. I think maybe it's just, continuously every year, just that hiring process and figuring out, who to bring in on the team. I think the most challenging part this year, I would say, was, two answers to that. First is definitely I bring in a lot of young staff, definitely first time job, type of students, which I love. I want to give them that experience. It also means it's a lot more training and a lot more supervising. So that's been a biggest challenge, just navigating on, who I bring in onto the farm. Also with farm team members that have allergies, they tell, this is a screened question that we have in the interview process. And so many people, I have it under control. It's not bad. And then that becomes like, come to the farm. And maybe it was just this year, but it seemed like every single day there was an allergy problem with one of the team members, right? So that was a challenge to address, because then it's like, I need to be on your A game every single day. Like, you got to give me 110%. So like, I push my team and they push me, and I want to see them grow. So it's really hard when, they're hindered by allergies and not able to work and give me that 110%. And then I would say the second biggest challenge this year was I introduced a lot more events at the Beaverton location, just to try to, offer a different experience. And it was really difficult, I would say, and maybe this is my lack of experience of marketing, and trying to get the word out for people to buy a separate sort of ticket price for a special event, music evening, live brass band. We had a musician from Hamilton come in and, do a session with his band on the back of the truck at a beautiful sunset. And it was like, or we did a picnic event with a cafe in Beaverton. Mm-hmm. So all those like different events I'm planning and spending all this time, but I need people to buy tickets. Yeah. And there were some events where, I didn't even break even on them. Right. And that was financially a stressful, point of the summer, just because, they're awesome events and we got great feedback, but we just needed to sell more tickets. Right. So
I call myself a marketer, and I find event marketing extremely difficult.
Yes.
So like for Thrive, the co-working community here, it's easy enough to get people through the doors for solving the problem of like wanting a place to work and all this stuff. But when it comes to the events, I've thought really hard and long about those, and like they're hard to fill. And we've quietly just not had some of the events that weren't going to work type of thing. Yeah. It's a completely different beast.
It is, yes. And I'm coming in with no event planning experience right at this scale. So just trying to really, bootstrap and just figure it out on my own or with my team, right? It's a lot more difficult than what I thought it would be, for sure.
Yeah, with things like events, it is hard because unless your audience is bigger and bigger, people have, say, a certain amount of budget that they're going to give you no matter what. Mm-hmm. But they might not go to 10 events. They're going to go to 2, or they're going to do something. So you kind of need more people. And then sometimes there's event fatigue where you just don't need as many, but the only way to figure that out is to just keep doing it.
Yeah, exactly. So this year was definitely eye-opening to see, what worked, what didn't work, maybe what night it works better on versus others, right? But then you go through the frustration of having to close the farm to the public when offering these events, and then people are frustrated about that, or there's miscommunication and all those fun emails to respond to, and it's a lot. Behind the scenes, it's a lot.
Yeah, and even you partner with people that like, okay, they've got a big audience, they're probably going to bring in some of their people, and like it's just difficult to get people's butts off their couches.
Yes,
and everyone is busy, and I won't go to events on certain nights of the week because I'm like, I gotta take my kids somewhere. Yeah, like, I could have my wife do it, but that's just our thing. It's tricky. It's just
It is.
I said to Brian months ago, like, I need an event marketer specialist.
Mm-hmm.
That's all they do, because there has to be something that I'm missing here.
Yeah.
And I am, but maybe it's not as dramatic as I'm thinking also. But there's so much. What you're describing is just so fascinating, where, yeah, you're the expert agro-tourism sunflower farm person.
I definitely don't consider myself an expert. That's just
you might be. Like, people are always saying, "Oh, I'm not an expert," but it is so hard to get people to pay to do anything. So just if I look at the ladder of victories to like be known, to have repeat people, to do all the things you're doing in such a short period of time, like if we were to do like a reality survey of like agritourism, like I bet you're in the top 20% anyway of like businesses like that.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
I would make that bet.
Well, if I'm ever feeling down, I'll just come to you guys, in the middle of summer when it's like nothing's working to plan.
I always did want to say this on the podcast because I think it's actually such a good idea. But like eventually, we'll probably ask you before this is done, like what's next for the farm. Mm-hmm. My coaching advice to you would be, it's not the farm that you're trying to sell. If I were you, I would be the expert agro-tourism consultant coach, where there's how many farms around Kawartha Lakes, and they have that space, they have that opportunity, they need extra money, they need that value add, they don't know what to do. You're the expert in that. Like, you know how to set up plans, you set up processes, you go to them or they find you and they're like, what do? We got all these pumpkins. How do we get people through here to see these pumpkins, and how can we take it to the next level? That's what I would be thinking about with you specifically, of like, that's the next step for you, and not to give you ideas of what your next business is.
I love it. I love how confident you are in my abilities. I mean,
right, in my head, like, because I always think about this thing in my head. I'm like, oh, maybe there's an opportunity for an agro-tourism consultant. And so far, you seem like the one to do it. But if not, like, maybe I can figure something out, like as the business owner type of thing. But I think like there's maybe not a gap that people recognize right now, but there's a huge opportunity for the amount of farms and everything that are around here.
Definitely. And I think though, like every farm is very much like, they have their vision and what they want to accomplish. And the first thing I think about this though, when you're talking about that, like, oh my gosh, I'm not qualified for that or anything. And maybe that's just like insecurities of mine there. But I also know it stems from like being a young farmer, young entrepreneur in this business, right? And a lot of people look at me and judge me for that too, right? So yes, I've only been doing this agritourism business since 2019, 2020, and it's grown significantly within that time and been quite successful. But it doesn't negate the fact that I am a young female, farmer, and we're in a very male-dominated industry. So recognizing that and the challenges that come with that too, and just other older farmers who have been doing agritourism for a long time and don't see that competition or hard to fathom how this has grown as it has over the past couple of years. So yeah, it's definitely something that I recognize in this industry for sure.
I think this is maybe a whole other podcast, and I'll try to be as concise as I can, but like, forget them. I've for years and years and years, and I've worked on the bank side with agriculture, like turn the world over to the young female farmers is what I say, because some people are so set in their ways, or they're like a slave to like the industry, sort of quotes of like, wow, this is how we do it. And I think you've proven that there's other ways to do it, because you start something and then people show up. People don't show up if you just complain hard at them, right? So some of the old farmers do that, or like, well, it doesn't work this way, but they don't.
Or they don't even see this as a type of farming, right? Yeah. Like they think, oh, she's just on her phone, taking pictures of nice flowers. It's like, no, like I'm in there too, dirty as can be, and getting in the field, planting sunflowers, right? Cultivating the fields. Like I'm doing that side of it too. And that doesn't mean that I have a team that I'm working with, and family members that I'm learning from and working with as well. But, I'm in there doing the dirty work as well, and trying to show that as well on, through social media and my website, and showing all parts of the farm, right? It's just, it's interesting. Agritourism, sometimes people don't see that as farming side as well. It has to be the old-fashioned way, right?
Yeah, which is, I think, really funny and old ideas. And it really contrasts a lot with like how farming has actually changed over the years. And it's also like the business element of spotting the opportunity, or like, this is a good example, and it might not have been exactly like this, but like Instagram's a thing. How do I make money, with my farm from Instagram?
Yeah, I still haven't figured that one out. I spent a lot of time, trying to utilize Instagram to help spread the word. But
but people come for the Instagram photo.
Exactly.
Right? So it's like, I'm paying you to take a picture of my kids by this that I'm going to put on, Instagram. So it's feeding into that. So, there's lots of opportunities like that other people just aren't thinking about or doing. So I think you have to give yourself all the credit in the world for actually doing it. So,
well, thank you.
So great job. Awesome. So we could find you at the sunflower farm, the little sunflower farm. What's the name of the third one that's opening?
Yeah. No plans there for the third one yet.
The littlest.
I'm still figuring out how to split myself in two. So I haven't, first got to do that, and then we'll see about doing it in thirds here. Yeah. But well, I definitely still wrapping up things from this year, and I would say I'm moving into a pumpkin patch here in Lindsay as well. I got that starting up for October. So again, first time planting pumpkins. So, I've got 10 different varieties there, and hoping they're all going to be ripening up nicely in the next coming days here. So, other than the sunflower farm, pumpkin patch, I'm not sure what's next for next year, and you'll just have to stay tuned, I guess.
Awesome. We will. On that note, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
Where do people find you?
Find me at thesunflowerfarm.ca. That's our website. Find me on Instagram, The Sunflower Farm there, or on Facebook, Twitter as well. So you can find me anywhere, or just find me. Come down to the farm and you'll find me there, probably wearing overalls in the fields, chatting with visitors. So that's where you'll find me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Comments on the podcast. If you're listening and you would like to be on the podcast, send us an email to setitup@kawarthasmallbusinesspodcast.ca.
And